Here we are with my favorite video that I make every single year. The last video that comes out in my arsenal every single year. That being what I think was the best albums to come out during the year. And this year, we're upping it from 10 best albums to the 15 best albums that I thought came out in 2024. That means no honorable mentions, just straight into it. And there was a lot I anticipated this year, and for the most part, I was not let down, and there was also a couple of surprises as well, so just get ready for that. And before we start, this list is subjective. You won't agree with me for some of these, and that's fine. Our lists are going to differ. You listen to what you want to listen to. I'm just here to tell you what I enjoyed during this year. So without further ado, let's kick it off with the number 15 spot with an old head still going strong. You know, I never thought in the year 2024 I would be sitting here talking about how Pearl Jam continue to make good records, but with Dark Matter, I just feel like they went back to the basics, kind of doing stuff from their older albums while also kind of mixing the newer stuff in. I mean, obviously, Eddie Vedder's not back to doing anything growly or anything like that. I don't really think he can do that anymore, but he can still sing decently to where you're not turned off by it or anything. It's just nice, it's soothing, and the fact that Pearl Jam's still able to just come out with records that you can enjoy from start to finish, it's almost surreal. Next. Not gonna lie, a lot of you actually hated this record coming up, which I don't understand, but why don't we just read some of the comments that you guys decided to leave on the album review for this video. You can tell from the first single this album sucked. The correct title for this record is Keep Flogging the Dead Horse. This one's not as crappy as the last one, which was pure shit. This one's still not great, but better? Horrible. Good review. I just had to add that one to show that not everybody hated my review of this album. Yeah, so apparently you all got something against The Offspring. Or at least you all got something against their new album, which I don't understand. Comparing this to 2020's Let the Bad Times Roll, this is by far leagues better. I'm not gonna sit here and say The Offspring went back to what they used to sound like, but they just did what they needed to do, and that was make fun music, and it just does its job. Whereas the last record, it wasn't so much that they were experimenting with different stuff that, you know, didn't really keep me interested. It's the fact that a lot of the songs were unmemorable, but here, there's a lot of great stuff that they just haven't put out in years, I feel. Like, these are some of the best songs they've put out since, we'll say, like, 2008-ish, and that says a lot considering the album that came out in 2008 had one of their bigger songs to date. It's just refreshing to see this band come up and do their thing and kind of win fans back, even if there are a lot of you on that album review who left a lot of hate toward it. I know that there's definitely a lot of people also that enjoy this thing like myself, and it's here at the number 14 spot because it's just good. Next. There was two albums that I would consider to be the album of the summer. This one was number one for a while, but someone swooped in and took that from them, but nonetheless, this album still slaps. Yeah, probably a surprise for me, but I do like Charli XCX. I've liked her past couple of releases, and I even liked back in the day when she was, you know, doing her own thing and featuring on a lot of, you know, big tracks as well. But with Brat, everything just works. I mean, it's supposed to be fun. You're supposed to dance to it, even if it is a little cheesy at some points. I feel like the album itself just does its job, and it is definitely one of the best pop albums of the year, strictly because Charli XCX isn't afraid to be herself, and she just doesn't give a fuck, and this album being titled Brat fits the theme of it. She's being very bratty, very petty a lot of the time throughout this record, and I just, for one, I'm down with it. Next. It's so good to have this band back. I got nightmares Now that Matt Skiba isn't tied up with Blink-182, he can go back to Alkaline Trio being the main project, his first band, obviously the one that he started out with. And they've always been a band to me that was very underrated when we look at like the 90s pop-punk bands. They put out some great albums, some great songs, and with Blood, Hair, and Eyeballs, they just continue to put out banger after banger after banger. Like, they're one of those bands that they definitely do have a bad album or two in their catalog, but most of the time they are going to hit, and when they hit, it is great. And I know the title track may have not have been a lot of people's cup of tea, but when you look at other songs on here, it just kind of throws you back to what Alkaline Trio does best and what they used to do, and the fact that they're still doing that in 2024, it's nice. And plus Matt Skiba just being able to, I guess, do different things that he had learned from Blink and bring it to Alkaline. Also nice addition because it gives you something different. Next. This is the first album on the list that grew on me over the months, because at first I was very 50-50, but now I can say this thing rocks. I still like Post-Human Survival Horror better than Post-Human Next Gen, but I think the thing for me that really wasn't hitting it right away is the aesthetic. Like, I get the aesthetic now, but I'm still not necessarily a big fan of that. But the songs in itself are pretty cool because it gives you everything that Bring Me the Horizon has been able to do well since, I don't know, 2013 Sempiternal, when they were still metalcore, but they decided to, you know, go in a little bit of a different direction. They use pop rock to perfection. They use metalcore. You know, Ali Sykes will come back with his growly deathcore vocals here and there. Like, they're just doing a lot of things right, and they're continuing this post-human survival story that they're supposed to be 4 albums of, which we're only on album number 2, so we'll see what comes past this, because apparently all the albums are supposed to be different. And this is technically the last album that will have any production from keyboardist Jordan Fish, as he would leave during the making of this, but his name is still on it for a couple things, considering he was there when the band was starting production on this. But don't worry, we'll see Jordan Fish later. But with Bring Me the Horizon and their new album Next Gen, it is an absolute trip, and I think has a little bit there for everybody, whether you're an old fan, a new fan, or a fan of what Bring Me the Horizon has done their whole career. So that being, you know, their early heavy stuff and what they've been doing now, you're going to be highly satisfied by the time it's over. Next. You just can't cancel this man, can you? I mean, no matter how hard people try, he just can't be canceled. And it's so funny because when you look at this album and the title of it, The Death of Slim Shady, you would think that Eminem is killing off the Slim Shady persona, but to me, I think it's misconstrued. I think he's kind of rebranding the persona in a way, not killing it off. Like, it's still going to be his controversial alter ego, but it's not going to be as out there as it once was. I mean, sure, the AI Slim Shady is a little weird, but, you know, at least it's Eminem doing it with his own voice rather than, you know, an actual, like, dead musician they're AIing because, oh, we need to hear their voice again. I mean, throughout the album, we hear the story of Eminem and Slim Shady kind of colliding together before Eminem ends up ultimately killing Slim Shady, but it seems like Slim Shady's not dead. He's just kind of reincarnated into something else, and even though Eminem thinks he's gotten rid of him, he realizes that, you know what, I am not who I am without Slim Shady, so he kind of comes to the realization that he needs Slim Shady to be who he is. And what's weird about this album, too, is there's 2 songs on here that are, like, sentimental songs as well, that almost make you tear up. And I know Eminem has had songs like that, like Mockingbird and When I'm Gone and Beautiful, you know, those kinds of songs. But when you listen to songs like Temporary featuring Skylar Grey and Somebody Save Me featuring Jelly Roll, Jesus Christ, Eminem is just, like, it amazes me how he can make a whole album where he's like, fuck you, fuck this, fuck that, and then put 2 songs on there where Temporary is mainly for his daughter Haley, you know, basically going around, you know, saying things that he's, you know, thankful for being able to raise his daughter and whatever, and he plays that clip at the beginning of her waking him up when she's younger and this, that, and the other. and it makes you tear up in the end. And when you get to Somebody Save Me, which is the album finisher, it's Eminem basically looking at the perspective of when he overdosed in 2007. It's from the perspective of if he had passed away rather than lived through it, and he basically went through his three daughters, that being Haley, Lainey, and Stevie, and basically saying like, oh, I was a shitty father, I wasn't there for you when I should have been, this, that, and the other, kind of saying like, what if this happened, and where would my daughters be without me, and where would I be without them, because he does credit his daughters for going out and getting sober, and it shows Eminem still has that serious side to him, while also being able to troll and joke around a lot on the same exact record, because, people are just that obsessed with trying to get him canceled because he's saying these things in his songs, even though this character that he's played for years has always been like this. It's nothing new and it's no surprise, but with The Death of Slim Shady, it's definitely his most cohesive record he's put out in a while, and I like Kamikaze, I liked a little bit of Music to Be Murdered By, but really this is the first time I would say since The Eminem Show, where from start to finish an album is actually listenable all the way through. Next. So about that album of the summer... Think about me every night, oh, is it that sweet I kiss so you can't sleep? Again, another surprise, because you wouldn't think someone like me, who's mainly into metal, rock, and some hip-hop, depending on what it is, would enjoy a Sabrina Carpenter album, but here we are with Short and Sweet, which the album in itself is short and sweet, but I don't know what it is. It's almost like Olivia Rodrigo, where, yeah, the lyrics are kind of cringy in a way, or at least, I don't want to say cringy, but they're just not something as me, an adult man, can relate to. But I think it's just the song's catchiness and the danceability to them is just, it's so good. Like, I can't really put it into words, because this was my first time ever hearing about Sabrina Carpenter. Apparently this is her 6th studio album, so she's been around for a while, and I think now that she's a little older, and this whole, kind of more grown adult aesthetic thing that she's doing, because she's been wearing a lot of revealing clothing, which is fine, again, not something I'm complaining about, obviously, but I just feel like, when I looked back and saw, like, the other eras that she had, it was a lot of, like, the sweet country girl kind of thing, but now she's kind of, letting it all loose, saying, like, hey, I'm angry, I'm horny, and I'm gonna tell you about it, with really no fucks given at all. I mean, she had 3 of her songs at the same time be in the top 3. The only other artist or band that did that is the Beatles. I'm not comparing Sabrina Carpenter to the Beatles, that's just... it's impressive. Next. I'm so glad this band is finally getting the recognition it deserves. With The Warning, they kind of got popular early on, 10 years ago, when, as, young girls, they did this cover of Metallica's Enter Sandman, and even a couple years ago, when Metallica celebrated the 30th anniversary of the Black Album, they kind of did like a reimagined version of their cover of Enter Sandman for that album. So yeah, even Metallica saw them and were like, this is cool, we want them to be a part of the, I think they called it the Blacklist when they celebrated 30 years of the Black Album. And this is the 4th studio album by the Mexican sisters, who just know how to rock. I'll say that much. Like, they make these rock songs that are so good and whatnot. Even if it is radio friendly, you can still bob your head and it's just very catchy. Like, it's just very interesting, but yet you never feel like they're selling out at any point. They're just making pure rock music, and the fact that they're finally getting recognition and being played on the radio and whatnot, it's surreal to me considering where they started to where they are now. It's just nice to know that people will actually actively look for some new rock acts to get attached to and bring up to the mainstream. Next. 2024 was a rough year for me. I found myself depressed a lot, and also very angry and upset. And when I was angry and upset, I just listened to this album and everything felt better. Like, thank God for Knocked Loose, or I would have went out there and punched somebody in the face that I shouldn't have punched, because, life just sucks, and sometimes you just want to punch things, but Knocked Loose, you just kind of listen to it and you go, man, this guy's just as angry as I am, and you know what, I kind of feel better now knowing that I'm not the only person that's this pissed off and angry. Like, seriously, this band just comes at you. There's no soft moment on here, just everything is so nice, and I like the fact, too, that these songs aren't too long. Like, with bands like this, it can get a little old after a while, especially if you're getting like 4 to 5 minute songs. But with a lot of these songs being anywhere between 2 to 3 minutes, they just go quickly and they do their thing, and every song kind of goes into one another, and it's just really, really cool. And Brian Garris, he knows how to make that high-pitched voice of his work. Like, it should be something that's getting memed, which I think it does a lot, but for the most part, people are okay with it because that's just what it is. Like, it's a natural thing for him. And the fact, too, that they got features on here from Chris Motionless, which fits so well on Slaughterhouse 2, and Poppy on Suffocate, which when I saw that feature and what Poppy had done on her previous album, Zig, I was like, okay, this might be a softer song. They might be trying to experiment with something, but no, was I and a bunch of other people wrong, because Knocked Loose and Poppy just go hard on that thing. They are loud, and it's everything you'd expect a Knocked Loose song to be. Like, they just did not disappoint. They brought you what you were expecting, and it's awesome. Next. The trilogy's finally finished, and I'll say that it's excellent. I'll take anything you have if you could throw me alive. So back in 2021, 21 Pilots kind of did a reverse a little bit, where instead of releasing the third album of the Blurry Face trilogy, they decided to make an album during the pandemic that was different, and it ended up being Scaled and Icy. And spoiler alert, in 2021, since it was my most disappointing album of the year, I put it in the #1 spot as the worst album of that year, because it just wasn't as memorable as their other releases, especially when you look at Blurry Face and Trench, where those stories were going and what the albums had to offer. Scaled and Icy didn't necessarily have that humongous hit or that stayability that the other records had, but with Clancy finishing off the story officially of Blurry Face and everything else, it's just a nice listen. I mean, Next Semester, again, is one of my favorite tracks of the year, and Backslide being another great track where you get more of the rapping from Tyler Joseph. They give you a bit of everything. It's soothing, it's fun, and it concludes a story that we've been waiting to conclude for over 6 years at this point. Next. Getting into the top 5, and our first band, well, they're not going to be around much longer. I think coming in March of 2025, this band will officially be no more, and it's kind of sad because their last couple of records have been bangers, including this one. Now done with lies, it's everything that you gotta say. The final record by Sum 41, Heaven and Hell, is a double album, basically with Heaven being the more pop-punk throwbacky side to what Sum 41 used to do, and the Hell side continuing down that metal kind of sound that they had been doing over their previous 2 albums. And I gotta say, both discs are very fun and excellent, and I think they just go out on a bang with this thing. It doesn't feel at any point in time like you're being let down, and it just feels like a nice conclusion to a legacy of a band who probably should have never lasted this long in the first place, with Derek Whibley's struggles with alcoholism and almost dying and all this kind of stuff. It's just nice to know that they actually were able to be like, all right, we're done now. Here's our final story, and here's what we have to offer before we leave you. And the fact that it's a double album, and they kind of, took what they had been doing and what they used to do and kind of, were able to put them on a double album together. It was almost like, hey, we're going to continue doing, what we had been doing, but also our legacy as a pop-punk band, we understand that, we love that, and we're going to make some songs about that too, just to kind of, finish off that chapter as well. It's just, because double albums are very hit or miss because they tend to be so long. I mean, when you look at a Stadium Arcadium by Red Hot Chili Peppers, that thing's good, but 28 tracks, it goes on for a little too long sometimes. And then, of course, you got Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 by Guns N' Roses, which is just over-bloated in my opinion. But with something like this, Sum 41 doesn't necessarily over-bloat it. It's the perfect amount of songs for what you would need for an album like this. And again, the songs don't trail on for so long, for 5, 6, 7 minutes, where you're just like, oh, come on, get on with it already. We get it. They're just, again, short, sweet, to the point. They're catchy, And again, it's a nice send-off for a band that has had a storied legacy, even if complicated.
Next.
Speaking of complicated, Linkin Park's back.
Let you cut me open just to watch me burn. Gave up.
And I'm going to be honest, I didn't know how to feel about it either, because that legacy they had with Chester and his sudden passing in 2017, I never thought we would be here again where I'd be talking about a new Linkin Park album, mainly because I just didn't necessarily know how the band would entail getting a new lead singer, because Mike Shinoda constantly said that we were never actively looking to like start the band back up and be like, let's find a singer. It was just around 2019 when, the band members were like, let's just go in and write stuff and we'll bring people in and just, write things and see where it goes. And when they brought in Dead Sarah's Emily Armstrong, they just knew that when they were writing these songs, like, these sound like Linkin Park songs. And now she's the new lead singer of the band. And with this new album, From Zero, which is a double entendre, mainly from the band starting from scratch at this point, and also paying homage to their beginnings, as their original band name was Zero with an X back in the day. They kind of go back to the drawing board and go back to their rock sound with songs like Two-Faced, throwing you back to what they used to do, say, during the days of Hybrid Theory and Meteora. Like, going from a pure pop album in One More Light to going back to their rock roots, it's almost like the band was just saying, like, alright, we need to energize the crowd again. We know that coming back with a new lead singer and even a new drummer, because Rob Bordone didn't return, that's going to be a little controversial, and I think they get it and understand it. But I think it was great that they made an album where they just go back to the basics and kind of give us what we want to hear for the most part. Like, is it all heavy and throwback to their old sound? No, but it's definitely, a return to the rock form that was lacking on One More Light. And a lot of the complaints I see about this album is that, oh, Chester's not on it, it's not the same, and to that I understand, but I think you still need to give this thing a chance, because there's really good stuff on here, and the new era is getting off to an excellent start. And I think that Emily herself, vocally, has really started to grow on me with a lot of the, songs that we have heard from the album itself, because she's not trying to be Chester. There's people that say, oh, well, she's screaming and this, that, and the other. They did the 17-second scream. They didn't do that because they wanted her to be like Chester. She's being herself. She sings like this sometimes in her band Dead Sarah. She's always had vocal chops like that. I think they're just doing these things to show you that, like, hey, Emily can do this. She can come in and be able to do things, maybe not do everything that Chester was able to do, but she has the natural talent to be a singer in a rock band as big as Linkin Park. And trust me, I think with time, people will start to appreciate her vocal talents. And I think since this is just round one of the new era of Linkin Park, it's going to take people time, maybe an album or two, to really kind of get back into it, or maybe kind of see how they feel overall about this era. But I think it's off to a great start, and I'm just so happy that the band is back. It's still sad that we don't have Chester, and we'll never get to hear a new album with him again, but his legacy will live on. The old albums are still there, and we can still support the band through their new endeavors.
Next.
So much better.
I was sober, now I'm drunk again. I'm in trouble and in love.
So yeah, I'm starting to think that 2020's Father of All Motherfuckers was just a troll by Green Day to their record label. I mean, I don't know, at this point it just seems like that, because they made a record so bad that everybody was calling it a career killer, but then they come back with this 4 years later and you're like, how do they keep doing this? They make albums where we say, oh, it's not that great, they're, kind of irrelevant now, or, oh, this is complete shit, they won't be able to rebound from it, and yet they do it every single time. I mean, going from 2000's Warning to 2004 American Idiot, that saved their career, and then after releasing the Uno Dos Tres trilogy in 2012 and Billy Joe Armstrong going through rehab, they came back with a bang with Revolution Radio in 2016. So when they went from Revolution Radio to Father of All Motherfuckers, I was saying, what the hell is this? Where's the consistency at now? Because it just seems to be gone. And it did have me worried for what was going to be coming next from the band in the future, because looking back at Father of All, I defended that thing. And I look at it now and go, yeah, I see where people are coming from. Like, it's definitely not the worst thing I heard, and might not even be the worst Green Day album. I don't know. That's up for debate. But yeah, I look and the singles were weak, and even the deep cuts weren't that great, and it's under 30 minutes, and an album that's under 30 minutes shouldn't be that unmemorable because there's not a lot to take in, but it was. But with this new album, Saviors, you get 15 tracks, and you kind of get Green Day doing a lot of different things from past eras, like a song like Look Ma No Brains kind of throws you back to Insomniac type era, whereas The American Dream Is Killing Me, that kind of reminds you a lot of American Idiot 21st Century Breakdown, and there's also some good parts from the Uno Dos Tres trilogy that kind of, sneak through here as well. It's just, it's a really good album. Even Revolution Radio had its flaws, so from start to finish it wasn't great. This album, from start to finish, is excellent. There's not necessarily a song on there that I hate, and I like the fact that they're still getting political while talking about other things. I mean, Dilemma is an excellent song, and that one goes through Billy Joe Armstrong's struggle with alcoholism and drugs at a point in time when he was like, I thought I was done with it, but the addiction came back, I relapsed, and there we were, and now thankfully, he's back and doing just fine, and the band's doing just fine. I would dare say that this is their best album since American Idiot. I'm not calling it American Idiot. I'm just saying that when I look at the albums of Green Day that I'm able to listen to in its entirety, American Idiot's on there, and this album's definitely on there because, again, they just seem to hit with every single song on this record. It's almost like they wanted to come back with a vengeance, telling you like, hey, we still got it. We didn't go anywhere. That last album we made, we were just kind of having fun with it a little bit, fucking around because, well, we could do that at this point in time in our career. But they're also still showing us that when they need to make a good album, they can do that too. Next. So what is the runner-up for my best album of 2024? Well, on the same day Linkin Park released their album From Zero, another artist released an album on the same day that I was anticipating because they finally decided to just take the experimental metal that they've been doing and go full frontal with it. And because of that, you get my number 2 album of 2024. I mean, it's about time Poppy fully leaned into the metalcore scene because on albums like Am I a Girl and I Disagree, she kind of, delves into it, but she doesn't fully commit to it. And then when you look at her past 2 albums, that being Zig, her previous one, and the one before that being Flux, it's more rock-oriented, pop rock-oriented, pop-leaning, kind of more on Zig than on Flux, even though she did kind of tease the whole metalcore thing on her EEP, which she did for the WWE NXT soundtrack. She's never fully gone into an album being like metalcore all the way, but production by former Bring Me the Horizon keyboardist Jordan Fish, I guess, with him producing, she was like, you know what? I gotta go all in. I gotta commit to this, and Jesus Christ, she commits to it. Even when there's one just random synth pop song and Crystallized on here, it doesn't bring the album down at all. Like, Crystallized is a banger of a song as well. It just feels so odd to put that on an album like this, but she just does everything to perfection. Her screams are getting better, and she's starting to just feel that rock formula. I feel like at this point, Poppy is just a full-fledged rock artist who, yes, will delve her toes into the world of pop music because it's where she started, but gone are the days of Poppy making the weird internet videos to tease her bubblegum pop music, and in is Poppy making a TV show that's weird in itself and could be on Adult Swim to tease her now fully heavy metal album full of just banger after banger after banger, and again, I'm here for it, and I can't wait to see what she has in store because she is very quick to follow up albums. She's one of those artists that you can't even say she focuses on quantity over quality because all of her projects have some sort of good quality to them. I don't really think I've ever gone into one of her albums saying, man, this is just quantity over quality, there's nothing good here. Like, there's something enjoyable about each and every one of her records, and they continue to get better even though it only takes her a year or two in between each album. It's so good. Next. So what is my album of the year for 2024? Well, it might actually come as a surprise because it's not a rock artist, it's not a metal artist, it is a rap artist. The only other rap album I've had on here is Eminem's The Death of Slim Shady, so that must mean that the only other rap album I reviewed this year made the list, and with that, you would be right.
Look, I tries to be out the way. I like the fun with the lead. I like some truth in my space. Y'all niggas friendly and fake.
I'm in the minority that doesn't really like Igor by Tyler, the Creator. I do like Call Me If You Get Lost and Call Me If You Get Lost the Estate Sale, so that was a big, to me, step up from what he did on Igor. I know, shocking, right? I don't like Tyler, the Creator's best album. I guess that's just me. Even though I did enjoy Flower Boy and that change, and looking back and listening to his older stuff, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't vibe with it as much as I used to, but there's still good stuff there. And with Chromacopia, Tyler's new album, I mean, he just continues to go all in on the soul and jazz while also rapping. Like, it doesn't necessarily feel like a full-fledged rap album, like he is rapping on a lot of these tracks, but it just feels like he's just trying to make a very good pop rap album, and again, he blew any expectations I had for it out of the water. I mean, when he released Paranoid, I said, this is awesome. I really like the song Thought I Was Dead. And even Sticky, a song that features like Sexy Red and like 20 other people, I was like, oh geez, is this going to be the one song where it's going to be like, why is this on here? But it's just really fun. And whether Tyler's having fun or, you know, talking about himself like on the song Take Your Mask Off, he's just basically kind of looking at himself saying like, yo, have I been the person that I think I've been over the years, or have I been playing this persona because I'm having such an identity crisis that I don't feel like me? Like, every song in its own is different, and it's great, and I just feel like now that Tyler's in his 30s and he continues to grow, his albums keep getting better and better, because at this point he's not focused on being edgy and, you know, doing and saying things to get under people's skin. He's singing about stuff from the heart, and he's trying to make it soulful, or mainly with the songs, he's just trying to make you feel the emotion that you should be feeling from them. And he just does it very, very well throughout, and it was definitely worth the 3-year wait that we got in between albums, which for him is a new thing, because usually it's been every 2 years that he's released an album, so he broke that cycle. And pretty much, he didn't necessarily surprise drop this, but he released Paranoid out of nowhere and barely gave us any notice that the album was coming out. And the fact that he was able to just drop the lead-off single and then the album like 2 weeks later and the album went #1 just goes to show you what kind of impact he has on the rap and pop community, that he's just able to drop an album and boom, people are going to go and people are going to listen. Well, there you have it. Those are my 15 favorite albums of 2024. Again, my list is going to differ from yours, and I know there's going to be some albums that I had on my list that you won't have on yours, and that's fine. That's okay. And if you want to tell me what your favorite albums of the year were, then go in the comments below and do so, and just tell me why they were on there, and maybe you had some surprises as well. What were just some albums that came out too where you didn't really have an expectation for? Maybe it's from an artist that you don't necessarily like, but when you listened you said, hey, this is actually pretty good, because again, there was some surprises on here for me as well. But until then, that's it for me. Have a happy holidays, and I will catch you all in the next one.